Okay, this is Mark 1, 21 to 28. Let's read it together. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent, and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. Now, up until this point in this first chapter of Mark's Gospel, we're reading about Jesus' preparation for ministry. He was baptized, he was tested in the wilderness, he chose his first disciples, and now his ministry is beginning. And it doesn't take long for people to realize just how different and special Jesus is, much different than any of the earthly teachers that they have. Now, Jesus did two things in this passage that proved that he was different from people's other earthly teachers. First, it was his teaching. So we see this in verse 22, right? That they were astonished at his teaching, and then again in verse 27, where it says, "What is this? A new teaching." All right. Now the second thing, so that's the first thing that Jesus is doing to show that he's different. Oops, that's still the first thing. All right. The second thing that Jesus did to prove he was different from earthly religious leaders was the way that he handled demons. In verse 27, the people were surprised that Jesus could just tell the demon what to do and it would obey him, right? It's like he commands even the unclean spirits and they obey him. So that's the second thing that Jesus is doing. And I don't know what the typical practice was for casting out demons in Jesus' day, but the way that Jesus did it was amazing to people. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now let's look at the people's responses here, all right, to what Jesus is doing. It says in verse 22 that they were astonished, all right, like just so surprised. And then they were amazed, as we see here, all right, they were all amazed in verse 27. And his fame spread everywhere, all right, throughout the region. So why? Why are they astonished? Why are they amazed? Why is his fame spreading everywhere? What did the way that Jesus taught and how he handled demons prove to people? It's namely this, right? That Jesus has great authority, right? And we see it several places here. The way he taught showed that he had authority, right? The way, because he didn't, and I think the reason that this is because oftentimes scribes, Pharisees, the religious leaders, when they would teach the people, they couldn't have authority on their own. They had to back up everything they said with quotes from other scribes who had gone before. Rabbi so-and-so says this, or scribe so-and-so says this. Right? They had to back up everything. But Jesus says on multiple occasions, he just uses his own authority. And it doesn't say it in this passage, but in many other places in the Gospels, Jesus says, "Verily, verily, I say to you," or "Truly, truly, I say to you." Right? He's not quoting anybody else. He's saying, "I say this of my own authority." And that's what made it a new teaching with authority, not as the scribes did. And the way that he cast out demons shows his authority too, right? Because he says a new teaching with authority, but I think what they're referring to here is the commanding of the unclean spirits. All right? The demons didn't fight Jesus. Like, Jesus didn't have to repeat himself. When he told a demon to come out, it came out, all right? And even today in the casting out of demons, even though we do so in the name of Jesus, it's a fight sometimes to get demons to leave, right? I mean, we say it over and over and over again, and I've observed several of these casting out of demons happening, and even we who carry the authority of Jesus don't carry the full authority of Jesus, all right? He's different, right? The demons recognize Jesus for who he is, and that is the Holy One of God, right? And only one person carries that title. So that's what this passage boils down to. This is the main point, I think, of this passage right here, is that because Jesus is the Holy One of God, he has great authority. In this passage, authority over demons and spiritual sickness. But as we go deeper into Mark's gospel, remember, we're still in the first chapter, all right, Jesus will show his authority over nature and weather. He's going to show his authority over death. He's going to show his authority over his enemies. He's going to show his authorities over all kinds of evil. And he's going to show his authority over all kinds of sickness and disease. And I'd like to stop there for today because I think it's a great point for what's going on in our world today. Did you just hear me, right? Jesus has great authority. I'm going to write it here under theology because it's what we learn about God in this passage. Right? Jesus has great authority over sickness and disease. And so you know what I'm talking about, can I say? And viruses. Is that a message that our world needs to hear right now in light of COVID-19? Absolutely. Absolutely. Jesus has authority over all of this. So let's just forget about this for a minute and let's just stare at this truth. Okay? Let's just sink this in. Jesus is in complete control of where this disease goes. If you will get it or not, and when it'll disappear from the earth. All right, so let's write under application, because Jesus has great authority over sickness and disease and viruses. What's something that I need to do? I need to trust the one, the Holy One of God, all right, who is in control. A friend of mine recently posted a graphic on Facebook that was encouraging and challenging to me. So I'm going to post it at the end of this video too. The picture will be up for a minute or so you can read it. And I hope it helps you control the things that you can control concerning this pandemic, but that you trust Jesus to control what you cannot. So I'm going to put up this graphic now. Push pause on your video just so you can read exactly what's there. And learn to control what we can control, but hand over to Jesus the rest, who has great authority over this sickness.